You have your studio guest there.
Yes.
Could I just remind your listeners?
Yes, hello and welcome back to the 100% Spa Show here on slrradio.co.uk. Yes, and as I was saying, just a little musical interlude. And if you want to contribute to this particular discussion tonight, 07984 931 588. Or you can send us an email, sparshow100, the number 100 at gmail.com. And tonight, as I promised, we've got a studio guest, pretty famous studio guest in the studio. We've got Jammers, and he's done some quite interesting things. Wrote an interesting book. I'm sure you remember the book that he's written. A couple of books he's written. 2 books now under your name. Basically, the second one is yeah, he doesn't want me to divulge it. I'm the name of the first book. But the second one written is about language and decoding language, and it was quite a very, very interesting book. And he's having out of that came he's former the Speakers Club, and he's having an event on the 22nd. He's here to talk about this particular event and so forth. So we have Jammers here in the studio, and in a minute we shall be talking about that. But I just want to before we go on to your event, I just want to see if I can, put in the hot seat in terms of the subject we're dealing with tonight, in terms of the very hot smoking. Just want to ask you about the engagement in the way that our communities, and what's your view on how our communities should engage the political system?
Well, you've really put me in a hot one already. I've caught the tail end of it about the political system, and it's true that the political system dictates every move that we make, the way that we think, the state that we're in, and whether you like it or not, it's the major factor in your life, whether you want to engage in it or disengage in it. So in order to deal with this, the first thing we have to do, we have to be able to tackle the community, understand the political system, and find ways and devise ways that we can have a voice in the political system. Because if someone's locked you in their prison, there's no point arguing amongst yourself and fighting amongst yourself. You're going to have to learn to talk to the jailer in a way that you can unlock the key. So the first thing, before we can even deal with the people who have imposed this political system on us, we have to be able to communicate with ourselves in order that we can come together as a force and have one voice, a unified voice. Because the only way to be able to impose yourself on a political system is through strength of numbers and unity in communication and movement and action. And the only way this can take place is if we have to reinvent the way we communicate, think, even, and come together and celebrate our differences and move forward with our differences and unify in one state of action. Just the same way we have a unified action when we go to the hair shops. We might not like each other, but we're all contributing to the hair shops and making millionaires out of the people who have these hair shops. We must be able to unify ourselves as well in a action that we can participate in that will benefit ourselves and not others.
Very well put there, Jammers. Given that obviously there seems to be a consensus so far, based on what and who have contributed so far, that we should engage in some way. But I'm sure that there are people out there who don't agree at all. Like the texter 685 is saying categorically that the system was not designed to serve our interest, our purpose. We're totally excluded in so many different ways. It's not there. I'm sure that people would point to lots of different factors to say, well, here you are. There's lots of evidence there in the way that we are at the bottom of everything, both naturally here in the UK and perhaps if you want to look at it at a global scale, we are also struggling at the bottom. So, but like you said, the situation is what it is. So, what do we do? Do we throw our hands at it? My thing is always, what's the alternative? What do we do? I've always tend to pose that question no matter what comes from the particular debate, because that must be what has to be done. What can we do about it? We can discuss it, we can intellectualize on it, but bottom line, what's our response to it? Because if you're not going to engage in the political system, then what is your response? Because we can't stay still, because human activity is always happening and it's perpetual. So for me, it would be about how do we determine to engage the political system, rather than should we not engage it whatsoever. This is not designed for our purposes, so then outside of that, what do we do? Since it is overbearing sometimes on our lives and making life difficult for us in so many ways, so then what is our response should be? That should be the question. What's the alternative? I think that should get us thinking. I think so. If you want to comment any further on what you've heard so far from Jammers and the contributors that we have so far, the number is 0794 931 588. So you have to make that quick, because in a couple of minutes I shall be having Jammers in the hot seat, and shall be talking about his event and what he's doing and what's coming up. But during that time, all calls and texts should be only be directed to him and not to our topics. So just in a matter of 5 minutes or so, we shall be having Jammers on to talk about his event coming up in March, and the calls should be directed towards him or something he's talking about. But if you want to contribute to what you've heard so far about engaging the political system, I also touched on a light right. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Linus here again.
All right.
Just a few quick points, given what you've just said, practically. You have your studio guest there.
Yes.
Could I just remind your listeners, please, about another culturally appropriate event that people, and the young people especially, need to try and get to with their families, and that is, and friends. Brother Asari got a commemoration of Malcolm X.
Caller, hello. Have you got your radio on? Because we're getting a lot of feedback in the studio.
I have.
Okay.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll text you the information.
Yeah, please do.
And if you could read that for that community notice, because that's on Saturday,
right,
the 7th of March.
Yeah, I will do. So just text it to the studios and I'll read it during the community break. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem at all. Good. So another community announcement there. So yes, like I said, I touched on like the subject in the program about East Indies, which I call Dead Indies. For all intents and purposes, and just looking at the way that black families were represented in East Indies in the last 30 years or so, and these are some of the families there. You had the Carpenters in 1985. You had the Taverniers in 1990. 1993, you had the Jackson family as well, and in 2000. You had the Truman family and Pacific characters and the way that they're representative. And the question is that has they done enough, or does it really matter? Because we've got more important things to talk about. But it's similar to the question about the government. It is there. So lots of black people do watch these cinemas, unfortunately, or fortunately. One or the other, I don't know which one. Do watch it and quite engage in it. And but has it done enough in terms of diversity? Not only for me, it's not about black faces over there, but the way that we are represented. It's not a program that I watch. I couldn't tell you what's happening on it, but the fact that a lot of us do, and for those who do, in terms of the way that we are represented on this particular program. So 3 decades of that, have they done enough in the way that we are portrayed? Right, so next up is in the hot seat. Will you tell me something there? Just yes.
Well, I'm quite worried about how the system represents us, because even every time I open the Evening Standard, I don't see none of our faces in there, unless we're maybe sports stars or criminals. So, and in general, in advertising or anywhere you see any pictures of us now, there's less of us doing any businesses or representing us doing any aspiring to any political greatness. You know, it's like the system. There's no design for us in the system. And if you look at even on the TV, look at Buzzin Bee's actually getting worried. He's looking through the stand and he can't see any any faces representing our hue. So I think we should be kind of concerned that their future doesn't seem to include us.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm well, you know, I mean, you've got a point there, but you know, the mass media here in the UK has never really represented us in quite a positive way. But that also speaks to the wider issue in the way that the mass media works anyway, because the media normally works on negative stories, stories that bring interest and that provoke interest. And obviously, what underpins that is about making money is the economic imperative to make money. So, and for some reason in the human psyche, that people tend to react to negative things. You know, because you look at the news or whatever, it's always negative. Always reflecting human disaster, you know, and negative human circumstances. So, in the context of that, and in the way that we fit in the picture, obviously, it's never a positive one, because you speaking about representation in the way that we are represented. This book called Decoding Language. What actually inspired yourself to write this? Because I read the book and it's quite interesting, and obviously you didn't go to the so-called formal institutions in order to come up with your work. So what really inspired you, and how did you come up with your theories?
Do you want to take the caller first? Well, basically, I had myself in a sort of traumatized situation where I was living in a car for a little period of time, a couple of years, and I was just surviving on a day-to-day basis. This is how I began my research. And one time I was outside the supermarket, and I just had enough money to buy it was either cheese or bread. So I was trying to make a decision: should I get the cheese or bread? And I just asked myself, why there's so much negativity in this world? And through answering that question, I just looked into myself and tried to find out, why am I here? Who am I? What am I? But I didn't stop at the surface question. I wanted to know, what is this all about? And my search, well, I said I'm a human. What's a human? A molecule. What does a molecule do? It revolves. And then I went, what does revolve mean? And then from I said, what does revolve mean? I saw there was two sounds that made up the one word, re and volve. And re means to turn, and re means to go back, and volve means to turn. And from me seeing that, then I saw that there were sounds in the words that they never told us about. And revolve means to turn backwards, you know, and return means to turn back. So that gave to me that you have to look back to go forwards, you know. And then I started to think that when we come from a hot place and we're living in a cold place, so maybe what works for them, the opposite works for us. And then I started to look at certain words like the word bus, which means something outward, like you bust out of prison, or a woman's bus, or a bus. And when I turn the sound backwards, you get sub, which is under. You look at like a substitute is the one who undo takes over, or a subway. So I thought, what is there something else in this word that's never been told before? And then the word top, the top of something is called a tip, T-I-P. When you turn it backwards, you get pit, under. So then I found that. Then I started to see that inside the actual words, there was a meaning that gave you a deeper meaning to what the word actually meant, more than the actual dictionary definition of the word. So when you look at the sounds and play with the sounds of it, and when you look at how the phonetics was formed, it was formed as using the words were not letters, they were symbols. Symbols is a sound, and we developed the art of playing with the sounds.
So very interesting take on that, because you obviously is not looking at the orthodox way, or what you call it the dictionary definition, in the way that some words come about, and the phonetics and the history, the etymology of the word, but more looking at what's in words that are in the word, and perhaps could give a different interpretation to what's being said. If not having a hidden agenda in some respects, in the way that words are, you could say that letters are symbols, but what has always fascinated me is the sound of letters, and where did that sound come from? Who, right? You said the letter T. Where did that come from? W, whatever. It's a symbol, and people put a sound to it, and the letter becomes alive. For me, I've always seen words as living things, and not something that's just dead. It's life, because the fact that we've got to utter them, we bring them to life. That has always been my take on that.
Yes, letters, you hit it right on the head. Letters is a living and breathing thing. If you look at the only way you can make a sound is through breathing. They don't tell you this, right? And through the motions that you can make with your mouth. And this is the basis of the formation of sounds of words. It's something that you use to create and dictate and inspire yourself. For instance, the alphabet. Why is the word? Does it start with the word A? They don't tell you this or end with the word Z. They don't tell you this in no books, no textbooks, no poet, no prophet will tell you why does it sound. Why is A first and why is Z? Because that is the dynamics of the human being. The first sound you make is via your ear. Breathing is ah. A baby will cry ah. And when you wake up in the morning, ah, that is the first sound. That's why the sound has to start with A. And the last sound of the letter, they don't tell you this in no textbook, no prophet, no theory or whatever. The last bit is when the last sound that you make when you sleep, or when you die. So your sound is based on the dynamics and the frequencies that you make. Also, your intentions, just like an animal, can be foretold by your tones that you make. So there's a dynamic in the sound where you can actually work out what the thinking pattern of a person is, and the vibration of a person is by the tones and utterance they make beyond the letters that they give you. A letter is a symbol without a sound that they've given you a fixed definition.
Yes, we've got Jamos in the studio tonight, and he's written a book called Decoding Language, and he's having an event coming up, which we shall be talking about in a moment. If you have any questions for Jamos, the studio number is 07984 931 588. That number again, 07984 931 588. You can drop us an email, Spa Show 100, the number 100 at gmail.com. There's a text just came in the studio from 763, and they're saying it's psychological. Put down to keep us down. Unity are the keys for many locks. Big up, jammers. So this caller is saying that the language aspect is designed to keep us down, and but he agrees with you in some respects that there are many keys to many locks. I think we've got a caller here who wants to say something. Let's take this call. Hello, good evening. 100% Spa Show. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I've just turned my radio down, Buzzin Bee.
Please do.
I'd like to make a contribution to this issue about linguistics.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just wondering how extensive your guest's research was, because with respect, he's talking about the European alphabet A to Z.
Yeah. Okay.
And with the Kemetic alphabet that first introduced writing, in fact, before them, the Ethiopians, it wouldn't have begun A to Z, would it?
No. Well, Jammers is here, so he can answer the question. Jammers?
Well, they have taken a watered-down version from us, but what I'm saying is to understand their wisdom, you have to use Kemetic wisdom to be at the level of understanding the wisdom at the level that I'm doing it. As I said, I've worked out that their sound is based on the air that they breathe, and it's limited by the tones that they make. And the reason why they say the stiff upper lip is because they do not want to give off certain sounds and certain intonations in the way the language has been constructed. So you can see inside the words hidden codes that have been put down, and the only way that you can do this is having a reasoning outside of the box. For instance,
and the other thing I would say is that because although my subject is not phonetics and linguistics, and the area of language that you're starting to research, or you've begun some research into, I obviously did look into this when I was doing my research for my literature, and having previously listened to professors from the African American community that lectured here in London. One person that I can think of immediately is Anthony Browder, who's well versed in Kemetic knowledge. And the issue around language, like I said, is very important, because when you consider Africa, for example, they have thousands of dialects. So what I would say, to add to what you're doing, because it's a useful exercise in the sense that what I would agree with is that the English language, obviously, is Europeans, Caucasians, way of communicating. For those of us born in the UK, we should seriously look at, and again I've referenced it in my book, either learning Jamaican patois, that is now regarded and accepted as a language in Jamaica itself, or the Caribbean, whatever island is most nearest to those listening, or an African language, because it's important that we as African heritage people actually appreciate that we have a language of our own, and this language is an expression of our culture. And this is why young people, and every generation of young people in our community, have always had their own slang and their own figures of speech, some good, some negative, some creative. However, it's critical when moving amongst nations that as adults we learn a language that is unique to our own particular land, in order to be able to converse with each other, aside from the European, and amongst ourselves using their English language. Thank you.
Okay,
Rastafari.
Yes, very much there, caller. Thank you for that comment there for Jammers. Do you have any other comment, Jammers, to respond to that? I think
yeah, I've got a slightly different approach to the caller. What I believe, well, this is what I've seen, is that we need to understand this language that is taking place on us physically, spiritually and psychologically in order to create our own language first. We need to be able to deal with this language, and if you're talking about any political system, you need to really know what this system is that we are dealing with in the first place. And the problem is the fact that we're even thinking and talking from this perspective, it's been taught to us by a European way of thinking that leaves out the Kemetic wisdom, and so by our very thoughts, words and actions, we are thinking in a way that is keeping us in a level that we cannot aspire to our true self, because we are learning in a way that is out of context with our nature, because our nature is working with divine law, where European nature is working to materialistic accomplishments.
It's quite interesting what you just going back before we get to this particular event. Your book, briefly tell our listeners about because you wrote this book about decoding language. What was the purpose of this book?
Well, the purpose of the book is to actually see if somebody takes your power, wealth away from you, they're not going to actually train you in a way that you can take it back off them. So it was actually looking at the words and the language in the base of the sound, because every word, if you look at the words, there's sounds that put together the actual words, and the sounds gives you another perspective of the meaning. For instance, the word pen. Pen comes from Latin and it means to hold. If you look at everything, every sound with pen in it virtually means to hold. They don't teach you this in basic English. Like you've got pen, and means punishment. Like penology is a study of crime and punishment. In football, you have a penalty, and that means you're in trouble. Yeah. When you're in a prison, penitentiary. You write with a pen, holding device. Suspend something, that means something held. You got a pendant on you, that means to hold. When you have no pen, you see a 0 in front of a pen, which means open, when you can move in and out. So there's a link in the sound and the language. If you look at a pen carefully, you can see it's a long instrument with ink in it. That is what a pen is, and that's what every man has between their legs. A pen is. That's why you have penetration, holding. So there's another aspect, another dynamic of this sound. That's why they say you're dumb. Listen, the word dumb means you do not hear the sound. So inside the sound, they have the meaning of they have an inner meaning of the word. And if you look at every sound the word makes, you find out the reality. Because when you go to a dictionary, you get a meaning. When you're mean, you don't give away nothing. A mean is an average. When somebody asks you what you mean, you're not getting to the core of something. So when the actual dictionary is not giving you the true, it's not giving you the finite, yeah, because it's a definition, and that's taking away the finite.
I suppose that there's some truth in that, because people will say, well, you look at words in a dictionary, and that is the dictionary definition, which is called denotation, and that is the dictionary definition. But people might be asked to give their own definition of whatever it is. Of course, for me, your experience of a word, for me, determines what the word means, because a word has a history, and the history of the word and the way that it impacts on people often give the meaning to that word. And for instance, one word that you think about is boycott, and the history of that is that actually means, obviously, to withhold, boycott. And that was a real person. It means to withhold your services. When you boycott something, you're not going to support it. And that comes from the Irish. That's in Irish history, when boycott decided to politically boycott all the things from England and stuff, and they decided to use the word and call it boycott. So that word came out of an particular experience. So you can give meaning to a word, what it means to you, because you might be in a class, for instance, and you might ask 10 people what a particular word means, and they would have their own general definition. The connotation is all the same, but people will have their own personal definition as to what the word means to them.
But what I would say, in agreement with that, what I would say is, you see, what the problem is, if you look at the word a letter, it's a fixed, they're giving you a fixed way of looking at something. They've set the value of what the sound is, right? A fixed way. So your brain is, the brain is not, your brain does not have to think in a certain way. It's told what to do. It's told what something is. It's told what the answer is. If you look at the Kemetic way of writing, the Kemetic way of writing was from up and down, back, right, sideways, up and right to left. That way, so we was looking at words in a way that we were using the full 360% of our degree of our mind. When we're looking at something, we're looking at it at all the angles, every angle, to get an aspect what we can develop something from. But the way that the system is now is, when you write in something, the word write means inside the word write you've got a writ, which is an order, and you've got a right to do something. When you do something without thinking, it's training you to work without using your brain capacity.
But on to this event, because you, out of that yearbook, you decided to form Speakers Club. How did that idea come about? Because you've got the Speakers Club. Then tell listeners what the Speakers Club is and what it's designed to do.
Well, I think that the next sort of the system that we're in at the moment is the next revolution that we need is not like we haven't got guns. We're not using our finances in the right way, and as you're talking about engaging in the political system, we need to reform the way that we actually think. So the next revolution to take place is a revolution of the mind, and the way you revolutionize your mind is you have to change the way you think. The way you change the way you think is you have to look at the language system and the words in a different way that you've been taught or told how to use it. To use your brain in a different way to come up with different answers and solutions to the problem that you have. So we put together this initiative of the Speakers Club to sort of just get the ball rolling in a way that we are coming together to look at language and in a different way that we've been told for it to be used, and we're going to sort of get together, put our heads together and talk about different aspects of the language in a way of proactivating a change.
Yes there. So you've got an event, the Speakers Club was formed to. What was the idea behind the Speakers Club?
The idea was to we'll have a topic. We'll have a monthly event with a topic and highlighting a specific aspect of language, because in your everyday life, the way that you speak can impact you in such a drastic way. It has, but you don't have any forum where you can go and practice or develop or have your skills evaluated from like a comedic perspective. So we've set this up. It's going to be in the Marcus Garvey Library, North London, Tottenham Green Leisure Centre, and that's going to be on Sunday the 22nd of March, and it's like a fun filmed event as well. It's not going to be like a heavy political. It's a way where we can get some of the stress off our brains.
Yeah, and from the conversations I had with you, because you have a particular theme for each month, and the theme for this month is about women has been very successful, make it successful, financially, but is this affecting their relationships? So that is going to be the theme in which the audience will be discussing, and also aspects of it. The theme will also be dramatized. Aspects of it will be dramatized, and then the audience will respond to it. But while the audience is engaging the conversation, there will be an evaluator there who will be evaluating the way that you communicate. But you also want to have the central thing for that evening is going to be about interpretation, because the Speakers Club is about, based on what you told me, is about also teaching people about communicating and conversation and the way that they use words and so forth. But the skill for that evening is going to be interpretation, and that will be there will be a criteria on which members of the audience will be judged on the way that they fulfill this criteria, and who's the most successful at interpreting this particular subject as the evaluator sees it will get a prize. And this is the nature of this particular event, and it takes place on the 22nd of March at the Marcus Garvey Library from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Tottenham Green Centre, Phillip Lane, N15 4JA, and this is in London, and presented by Brother Dougie, myself, and Zara, and the guest of honor is Dr. Abo Rutata, Galaxy FM, and you've got quite a lineup of supporters here supporting the event. We have SLR Radio, Conscious Radio, Galaxy Radio, Station FM, Genesis Radio, Peppers and Spice, Future Cut Barbers, Simply You, Find Your Voice, Caribbean Sunset, BB3D Media, the Welling Centre, and the ACLC Big People's Theatre, and also the Light Shop. And this event is endorsed by the Royal Institute of Speakers, and of course admission is free, and as you said, with two of these that you get a VIP invite. So do I get a VIP invite, or what's going on there?
Yeah, the host. So yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, but that's the key of it. It's a new initiative, and I'd like to thank everybody for giving us their support. It's time that we've got the power to resurrect ourselves. Resurrect means to go back to becoming elevated. So come down, test your speaking skills. You might think that you're hot, but the evaluator might show that you're not, and you're required to think on the spot. So come with us, and it will stop your brain rot inside.
Right, I'm very poetically put. I will be going to Jammer's school of poetic narrative. I shall be going there because I'm not quite good at delivering like that. But Jammers, thank you again for coming in the studios tonight to share with our listeners that initiative that you're doing, and of course the SLR is supporting your initiative. Yeah. If people want more information, you've got information that you can give the listeners if they want to go and see what the Speakers Club is all about.
Yes, sir. You can go and check us out at www.speakersclub.co.uk, And once again, you can also become a member if you want. If you like to join us, you can fill in your membership application, or if you just like to support us as well, you can also become a member. And yes, just come down and find out for yourself what it's all about.
Thank you very much. Thank you, jammers. We have some community news and information break. So thank you again. Thank you for listening. And whatever you do, have a positive week. Take care of yourselves.